In March 2026, Dakota Johnson became the face of Calvin Klein's spring campaign. The internet lit up. Fashion outlets called it a perfect match. And just like that, Dakota Johnson is everywhere again. But less than 2 years earlier, she starred in Madame Web, 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, a Razzie sweep, and a press tour where she couldn't name a Spider-Man movie.
Can you name the 3 Spider-Man Tom Holland movies?
Yeah, Spider-Man, here he comes.
Here he comes,
That's number 1.
Yep.
Spider-Man, and he's back. And the other one, the last one is The Goblet of Spider-Man.
She admitted she hadn't even watched her own film. For any other actress, that's a career-ending disaster. However, for Dakota, she just keeps coming back bigger. But by the end of this video, her response to the LA Times will tell us everything about how Hollywood actually works, and it has nothing to do with talent.
What actor would you love to share a scene with that you haven't already worked with?
Well, that's a good question.
My daughter!
Oh, Dad.
Yes!
I wasn't expecting
No, that for sure.
Dakota Johnson comes from what might be the deepest acting dynasty currently working in Hollywood. Tippi Hedren, Melanie Griffith, Don Johnson, Antonio Banderas. Her first on-screen role came at age 10 in Crazy in Alabama, a film directed by Banderas, starring her own mother, and produced by their family company. By the time producer Michael DeLuca noticed her in a single scene on The Social Network, she'd already been signed to WME and IMG as a teenager, then named Miss Golden Globe at 16, a title her mother had held a generation earlier. She didn't fight her way into that room. The room was simply built for her. And the way she landed 50 Shades of Grey tells us the whole story. DeLuca had produced The Social Network, where Dakota had one brief scene opposite Justin Timberlake, barely a minute of screen time. He later told The Hollywood Reporter he found Dakota quite compelling. So when he began producing the 50 Shades of Grey adaptation, he brought her name into the conversation, not because she beat everyone in an open call, but because DeLuca already knew her. The relationship got her through the door, and the audition was just a formality. The franchise made $1.32 billion worldwide on a combined budget of $150 million. The first film alone netted over $250 million in profit. But critics hated every single one.
Example, mathematics tell us a negative and a negative equal a positive. Literary world, if you have a shitty author take inspiration from another shitty author, it doesn't make a positive movie, it doesn't make a good movie, it just makes shit. It's shit inspired by shit, which creates more shit.
50 Shades of Grey holds a 25% critic approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 50 Shades Darker dropped to 11%, and 50 Shades Freed matched it at 11%. Dakota also won the Razzie for Worst Actress. And the worst part? She didn't even want to make them. In a 2022 Vanity Fair cover story, she said she'd signed up for a very different version of the film we ended up making, and described shooting 2 versions of every scene, one for the author, one for the creative team. She called the entire production psychotic. Even the director of the first film, Sam Taylor Johnson, said it took her 4 years to recover, and she never came back to direct the sequels. But here's what matters. None of that changed Dakota's trajectory, because $1.32 billion became a number, and that number follows her into every pitch meeting, every financing conversation, and every casting discussion, regardless of whether anyone in the room actually thinks she can act. In Hollywood, the number is the argument. Then came Madame Web, $80 million in budget, but only made $100 million at the box office, against roughly $140 million needed to break even. The press tour even became more famous than the film.
She has such an immense resume and so much experience, so she just feels very comfortable on set, and it's really nice having an environment where you know someone feels at home and you're not like nervous around everybody.
When asked to name Tom Holland's movies, Dakota answered Spider-Man, Here He Comes, and The Goblet of Spider-Man. She also added that not watching her own movies is self-care. To be fair, under the right director she can deliver real work. The Lost Daughter and Suspiria both drew genuine praise, but those were supporting roles in small films most people never saw. Yet, the big roles, the ones that actually test whether an actress can carry a movie, keep ending the same way. So if the big roles keep failing, why does Hollywood keep handing her new ones? The answer isn't about Dakota Johnson at all. It's about how this industry actually decides who gets cast.
was great to see it with an American audience who are so vocal in their appreciation or not of certain things. I was thrilled and relieved that it all seemed to work.
To understand how Dakota Johnson became unfireable, we have to talk about E.L. James, because the machine that protects Dakota has a face, and it starts with a woman who wrote fan fiction on her BlackBerry. James was a former TV executive with no publishing credits. After watching the first Twilight movie, she became so obsessed with the story that she started writing her own version. Same characters, same dynamic, but with a BDSM twist instead of vampires. She typed it on commutes, after her kids went to bed, and posted it online under the pen name Snow Queen's Ice Dragon. It got millions of reads. Then she changed the character names. Bella became Anastasia, Edward became Christian, and published it as 50 Shades of Grey. She described the whole thing as my midlife crisis, writ large. And when Hollywood came calling, she didn't just sell the rights and walk away. Universal let James pick her own producers, an almost unheard of level of control for a first-time author. Top Hollywood producers pitched to her personally. James chose DeLuca because, in her words, he really got it. He understood it was a love story. The same producer who already had Dakota on his radar from The Social Network. And James took full creative control over who would play her lead. Dozens of actresses were in the run. Elizabeth Olsen, Shailene Woodley, Felicity Jones, names that would go on to become Oscar nominees and Marvel leads. However, James passed on all of them. She picked Dakota and then announced the casting herself on Twitter in September 2013. Fans were so outraged, they started a Change.org petition demanding Dakota be replaced. It hit 80,000 signatures. The internet was convinced James had made a mistake, but James didn't flinch. Once production started, she overrode the director on nearly every creative decision. Dakota later said James had a lot of creative control all day, every day, and she just demanded that certain things happen. The first director lasted only one film, while James lasted all three. A woman who'd never written a novel before her 40s had built a billion-dollar franchise from a Twilight fanfic, then handpicked the lead actress whose career would be permanently protected by the number it created. That's how the machine works. It's not an audition. It's not about who gives the best read. It's about who gets your name on the list and who has the power to pick it. DeLuca got Dakota's name in the room. James chose it. And then she built the number that made sure Dakota could never be removed from it. Dakota's cumulative worldwide box office now exceeds $2 billion, and that figure gets cited in trade publications, in pitch decks, in financing meetings. It doesn't matter that the vast majority of it came from a franchise people watched despite her, not because of her, or that she needed a Twilight fanfiction writer to hand it to her. The figure exists, and in this industry, the figure does the talking. But the number only explains how she gets in the room. It doesn't explain why she stays there, even after the worst failure of her career.
This is the worst thing you've ever made me watch. This was less enjoyable than Rings of Power and Halo
0
and
out
the
of
Kenobi
10.
show. Like,
0 out of 10.
nothing redeemable here.
And here's the part that separates her from every working actress who doesn't share her last name, Johnson. When a non-connected actor stars in something as catastrophic as Madame Web, their career either ends or freezes for years. Agents stop calling, studios move on, and the math doesn't work anymore because there's no dynasty, no agency infrastructure, no billion-dollar number absorbing the hit. However, Dakota's pipeline didn't even pause. Within months of the Madame Web disaster, she was cast in Verity, opposite Anne Hathaway, then booked in The Three Incestuous Sisters with director Alice Rohrwacher alongside Saoirse Ronan. She went on to receive the Karlovy Vary Film Festival's President's Award and signed a first-look production deal with Sony Pictures Television for her company, Tea Time Pictures. Then, Materialists opened, directed by Celine Song for A24, earning 5 times its budget and pushing her past $2 billion in career box office. By March 2026, Calvin Klein had made her the face of their global spring campaign. The worst year of her career was immediately followed by one of her best, because the system never stopped feeding her opportunities long enough for the failure to stick. And the comparison that makes this undeniable is with her own peers. When New York Magazine published its Year of the Nepo Baby cover in December 2022, Dakota's face was among those edited onto baby bodies. But Zoe Kravitz and Margaret Qualley, both Nepo babies too, each have a signature performance that effectively silenced the conversation. Kravitz has Catwoman and an Emmy nomination. Qualley earned a Golden Globe nomination for The Substance. Meanwhile, Dakota doesn't have that role because her best-reviewed work lives in supporting parts in indie films with limited cultural reach, yet her pipeline continues to stay as full as either of theirs. And when the nepotism conversation came for her directly, she didn't flinch. On the Today Show in 2024, she called the Nepo baby debate
like incredibly annoying and boring.
Compare that to Margaret Qualley, who said, "You can call me a Nepo baby. I just so desperately want to be good and want to deserve to be in the room that I'm in." One answer comes from someone who knows the door might close. The other comes from someone who knows it never will. Then came the moment that proved it. In 2025, after Madam Web had already become a punchline, after the Razzies, after every headline, Dakota told the LA Times, "It wasn't my fault. There's this thing that happens now where creative decisions are made by people who don't have a creative bone in their body." No mention of her own performance, no reflection, just blame aimed at everyone else in the room. From someone whose biggest roles have been critically destroyed over and over again. And you don't talk like that unless you know, without question, that the system will catch you no matter what. Now, she's pivoting, producing through Tea Time Pictures, preparing her feature directorial debut. Hollywood isn't just protecting her acting career anymore, it's building her a second one. Hollywood keeps casting Dakota Johnson because the industry doesn't reward the best performance. It rewards the best infrastructure. And she has more of it than almost anyone alive. The dynasty gave her access, the franchise gave her a number, the agencies gave her packaging, and the system gave her something no audition tape can buy. The guarantee that no single failure, no matter how spectacular, will ever be her last. The same industry that handed her a stepfather-directed film role at age 10 is the same one that gave her a $100 million hit the year after her worst disaster. Her career isn't the exception, it is the system, and the system was never designed to care about talent.